Before we start this video, a large thank you to Sleepy BV, Pedro, Ryan, The Fruit Snack, Christian, and Jeffrey for their support on Patreon. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. And a special thank you to Michael W. Harden for their support this month on Patreon. Your support is immensely appreciated, my man. I plan to do this in another video, and I'm going to, but while I'm here too, I also want to shout out some people that have been with me since the very beginning or very close to it, and people who have immensely helped this series and supported them. They are in no particular order as follows: Liam D., Yusuf Ali, Eric L. Ruhlman, Stephen Trebley, Travis Pearson, Brandon Fowler, Richard Smith, and Hector Bermudix. There are a few more of you I want to mention too, but I will save that for the other video I'm planning. Your support does not go unnoticed, guys, and I just want to say thank you for sticking with me for so long, and I hope I can continue to put out content that you guys love and support. Enjoy the video. Hello guys, and today we're going to add friendly fire to our game, and we're also going to add some UI images. As you see here, if I load in, I have the firebomb equipped, but there's no UI image displaying that I have it equipped down here. So we're going to get that done too, and we're going to also put a UI image in for our current spell. But first, we're going to tackle friendly fire. So right now, if I have multiple enemies in the game, they'd actually be able to hit each other. And that's a problem, obviously. We don't want that. And we also want to make it so if you have multiplayer summons, you can't hurt them and they can't hurt you. Well, you might want that. I'm going to show you how to do it anyway. So under the character stats manager first, let's start off by making a header. I'm just going to call this team ID. And then we want to make a public int, and we're going to call the variable team ID number. I'm going to initialize it at 0. Then we can copy this whole thing here, and go to our damage collider script. And then right above poise, right here, paste that. And we want to assign this number to the damage collider every time you equip a weapon or do an action. So we're going to want to go to our enemy weapon slot manager, but first let's go down here on the onTrigger event on our damage collider. So you can see here where we check for is parrying and if we're using a shield or not. We don't want to be able to check for that if we're hitting a friendly. So we'll say if enemy stats dot team ID number equals team ID number 2 equals, then we're just going to simply return. And that makes it so a friendly can't block you or parry you. And then we'll do the same thing to applying the damage step and poise damage down here. So just copy this. Right where here where it says if enemy stats does not equal null, we're going to put it right above here. You see where we check the poise and we do damage. Right above all that, we're just going to say if the team ID number is the same, return. That way we can't do poise damage and we can't hurt our friendlies. We're going to leave the illusionary wall the same because there's nothing right there that needs to be checked. And let's hit save and we're good to go. Now on the enemy weapon slot manager, where we have load weapons damage collider for is left and right. Right below here, or wherever you want, honestly. We're just going to assign the team ID. So we're going to say left hand damage collider dot team ID number is equal to enemy stats manager dot team ID number. And we do the same thing for the right hand. And we're going to essentially just be loading on the team ID every time we load on a weapon. So this will work perfectly. We're going to have to do the same for spells and items like bombs, but that will be even simpler. Okay, so now that we have that done on the enemy weapon slot manager, let's go do it on the player weapon slot manager. In the future, we can integrate these functions so they both share the same function, but for now, we'll put it on separate scripts. So let's come to load left weapon damage collider and do the same thing we did on the other one. We'll say left hand damage collider dot team ID number is equal to player stats manager this time dot team ID number. And doing the same thing here again on the right hand, I'm just going to paste that and replace the word left with right. Okay. Moving along swiftly, looks very nice and very simple, very straightforward. This is just such a simple way to have friendly fire enabled or disabled. So let's go to spell damage collider next. And you'll see on collision enter, we scroll down here. You can see right here, we're actually inheriting this from the damage collider. So that means we have the team ID variable here. So if we scroll down, you will see that if spell target does not equal null, we're assigning some damage here. Well, all we have to do in this also is just say, if spell target does not equal null, and then we can say end after that, spell target dot team ID does not equal team ID. Otherwise, it will still blow up, the spell will still explode, but it will not do damage. So we're good. And that will assign the damage perfectly. So now we go on to the bomb damage collider, which is a little bit different, but kind of similar to the spell. Down here, we actually have the pseudocode here for check for friendly fire. Let's erase that debug. Don't really need that right now. So we can just say if character does not equal null, we can do the exact same thing here. Well, actually, we can put it down here. We can say if character.teamID does not equal team ID number because we have to check for the null, and then we're checking this. So we'll put that in there like so, and I believe we have to check on the explode too because the explode does splash damage. Let's go down on that. Here we go, yes. So if the character is not null, so if we have a character, and if that character does not have the same team ID as this bomb, then we will do splash damage. Now, it's all well and good, but we're not actually assigning our team ID to our bomb or our spell, so we have to do that as well, because right now the code works, but we're not actually assigning like we do for our weapons. Now, to assign it on the bomb, come to the player weapon slot manager, where we have successfully throw bomb, and you see here we have some pseudocode, check for friendly fire. We can actually put that on the damage collider dot team ID equals player stats manager dot team ID, and that's done. Now the bomb will work as intended. And as for the spell, we have to check where we actually assign the spell, which is in our projectile spell script. Right here, we're instantiating the spellcast effects, which is what we want, because if we just say instant, we can make a variable of type spell damage collider, call it spell damage collider, and we can make that equal instantiated spell effects dot get component, because that's where the script spell damage collider is resting. And then we can simply say spell damage collider dot team ID is equal to player stats dot team ID, because we passed that to cast a spell. Very straightforward, very simple. Okay, now your spells, your bombs, and your weapons will have friendly damage. And just to show you, check this out. My team ID is 0, so I'll throw a fireball. Let's pause the game. And if I click on the fireball here, we can go to the top of it. You'll see the team ID is 0. Now that is the default setting, so just to prove it again, I will just change my identification number on my player and show you. So I'll go to my player, I'll change the team ID number to 1, and then I'll go back to the game and I will cast the spell. There we go. If I click on the spell again, now you will see that the spell team ID number has changed to 1. So whatever the team identification number is of the caster, so will be the spell. Now if I take this enemy right here now, as you can see, he's trying to kill me. And he can't do any damage to me because we both have the same ID number. However, if I stop the game here now and go to the enemy and change his damage, or rather his team ID number from 0 to 1, then if I go back here now, he will be able to damage me. And we're going to make it at the end of the video so he actually won't see you as a target unless you're on a different team. But there you go. He can damage me again, and I can damage him. So we are good to go. All right. Now, before we move on to the last step, let's actually fix this UI. And I say fix, that's a bad choice of words. Let's set up the UI, because I don't think we've actually set it up to support spell icons or consumable icons. So as you can see, I have a fireball equipped, and I have a firebomb equipped. So a fireball spell and a firebomb, there is no UI popping up. So let's actually go to 2D view and zoom in on the quick slots here and open up the script. And you will see we have an image for our left weapon icon and our right weapon icon, but we do not have an image for our consumable icon or our spell icon. So let's make 2 image variables, public of course. We'll say current spell icon, and then we'll say current consumable icon. You can use the word quick slot icon if you'd prefer. We save that, and then let's make 2 functions down here. The first one being a void called update current spell icon, and the second one being a void called update current consumable icon. Now, much like the function above, we will pass a spell item in the update current spell icon, and we will pass a consumable item in the update current consumable icon function. Now, if you check the logic above here, it's essentially the same thing, except we're not checking for an alternate hand. So let's just look what we got here on this function above. So all we're doing is we're just setting the icon sprite to the icon sprite of the item, and then we're enabling the icon if we have one, and we're disabling it if it doesn't have an icon. So we're just going to say if spell.item icon does not equal null, we're going to say current spell icon.sprite equals spell.item icon, and then we're going to say current spell icon.enabled equals true. And then we're going to simply say else current spell icon.sprite equals null, and then current spell icon.enabled equals false. And it's just that easy. And then we can copy and paste the logic right below, and it will work the exact same way. So let's just copy all this right here and paste that in the update consumable icon, and change the word spell, obviously, to consumable. So instead of current spell icon, it will be current consumable icon, and instead of spell, it would be consumable. Okay, so now after this should work fine. And I don't think we actually have, I know we don't have any code yet to cycle through multiple spells or consumables. So this is all we need right now. And because we don't have code to cycle through multiple, I think I'm just going to call this on the awake method of the player UI manager. And in the future, when we have multiple ways to scroll through multiple spells or consumables, we can set it up like here, where we update it every time we switch. But for now, we don't need to do that. So let's actually head over to the quick slots themselves first. Let's see what we got. So yeah, these actually don't even have an icon under them. So just ignore what I'm doing right now. We first need to actually make an icon under these. I'm going to change this to a consumable slot as well. So what I mean by icons, if you look under the right-hand slot, we have an icon. This is the actual picture that changes when you assign a picture to it. The other one is just a background. So let's make a blank picture. I'm just going to copy this and put it under the spell slot as a child, paste it, reset the transform, and then scale it to the size of the slot. And do the same thing for the consumable slot. Because as I just said, this consumable slot, game object, it's just the background. We want a blank image to go over it that we can enable or disable every time we assign it an item image. And now we drag in the icon game object into the variable of current spell icon and current consumable icon. Whoops, I think I dragged that in the wrong one. Yes, I did. Okay, there we go. Now, all it's left to do is to basically call this after we load our inventory. So let's head over to the player UI manager, and I'm going to make a private variable of quick slots UI. I'm going to call it quick slots UI, and then on awake I will call that. But first, let's just on start say quick slots UI dot update current spell icon and pass our player inventory dot current spell. And then we're going to say quick slots UI dot update current consumable icon and pass our player inventory dot current consumable. Now this won't give you an error if you don't have one, because it will just do nothing if you don't have one equipped. So this is fine. And on awake, we're going to say quick slots UI equals get component in children, because this script rests in the game object of a child in the hierarchy of this one. Okay, now that should work as intended. Let's go back into the game now and take a look. So if I press play here, there you go. I got my purple mouse clump equipped, and I got my fireball spell equipped, and you can see them both in the UI slots. Excellent. Okay. So now we have one thing I want to do in this video, one thing remaining rather. I want to make it so our enemy can't see us unless we are on different teams. And when I say can't see us, I mean it won't take aggression. So if you have friendly AI set up in your shrine or whatever, you don't want them to run at you and try to kill you unless you make them aggressive. So let's go over here to our enemy's idle logic. And right here we have a pseudocode from ages ago called check for team ID. All we're going to say here is we're going to say if character stats dot team ID is equal to enemy stats dot team ID, then we can just say return. And that's all there is to it. And if you want to actually simplify that even more, or I mean make it look a little bit different or neater, instead of saying that, you can actually just, you can say return this state, by the way, not return. You can just put if it does not equal team ID number, then we're going to copy and paste this logic in here. So if the enemy does not have the same team identification number as us, then we can add him as a target. And now this should work fine. So I'm just going to reset the enemy's team ID number to 0 while the game is live. And I'm going to run over to him, and he should not see me because my team ID is also 0. Now if I walk in front of him like this, you will see nothing happens. Now if I change his identification number from 0 to 1, which is different, he will instantly aggro onto me, and then he can start doing damage. So there you go, guys. Now you have a fully functioning friendly fire damage system. We got some new updated UI icons, and this friendly fire system is going to branch off into when we eventually add neutral NPCs. So a neutral NPC will be a little bit different because they won't be aggroed to you, but they will be on a different team, but you can damage them. But this is the basis for that system, and this is the full system for how we will handle enemies and friendlies. So now if you have a summon and they come into your world, they'll be assigned a team identification number, and if they're the same number as you, they will not be able to damage you. You will not be able to damage them. If they're a different identification number, you guys can damage each other, which is the case for reds or purples. Alright guys, hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please leave a like, drop a comment. It does genuinely help my series out so much. And if you're like a total champion, check out my Patreon below. I will see you guys in the next one where hopefully we will start our archery template.